Welcome back. Now that you have a solid foundation on what this technology is and how it works, we want to pivot now and begin to dive into implementation. And we're going to start with a set of implementation options that you have. Chris, walk us through these implementation options.
Fantastic. And I think options is the big word. And just as context, we want to reinforce this. This is another plot from Google Trends. I snapped the line here, I think, in late April this year. So these are search terms and the frequency with which they occur in the Google browser. So you can use the same utility, Google Trends, but you'll see the blue and the red lines there are on GPT, Generative Pre-trained Transformer, or ChatGPT, the interface that many of us are comfortable in using today. And then BARD, which is the Google submission, and BERT, another open source model that is long-standing, 2018 or so. ChatGPT and GPT just consume so much conversational energy. We want to ensure that you as a leader grasp clearly you have options. These are not the only games in town, and they're important distinctions in the capabilities, and if you grasp that, you'll be able to navigate the decision making on which options make the most sense for you. So to start, think of 4 functions that the large language models can address. These generative AI capabilities can address them. There's natural language generation, code generation, software code generation, image generation, and then multimodal. And in each one of these areas, there are a number of options. So if you take natural language generation, these are just 3. We've listed a bunch elsewhere, but to reinforce, Llama, that's open source. You can get it. Your teams can pull that via an API. It is an open source model they can use. And then obviously GPT and BARD, but there are multiple. In code generation, there are multiple of these LLMs that are being tailored for improved software code generation, and we list some of them here. In image generation, it's the same. DALL-E, which is tightly aligned with the OpenAI GPT offering, it's a for-fee service, but creates pretty phenomenal outputs. Crayon is free. So you can literally write a text description of something that you want in Crayon, and it will convert that into a drawing. And those are high quality and they're free. Muse is another that is available there. And then multimodal is definitely where things appear to be moving, and it's an application. There are a number of models which are already demonstrating capability here, and there are really 2 facets to watch on that score. Can it ingest multimodal content via a prompt or input and give you a solid quality output? And then is the output multimodal? And I think we can all expect to see continued movement and improvement there over time. But those are the 4 functions. And in each one of these 4, there are options. And if you start as a leader knowing that it's not a thing, there are a palette, how do you start to process that? And we want to give you a simple rubric for evaluating your situation and then navigating. There are 4 parts to this that we would argue constitute the big elements in any kind of conceptual design. In the first one, you need to make a determination: is the LLM that you're going to use sitting inside your firewall, inside your proprietary organizational protections from a cyber perspective, security perspective, or are you sending requests outside the firewall? The second issue, it's a trap for you to believe this is only about the LLM. We would encourage, think clearly about wrapping this in other software or integrating it into other software. It doesn't mean you have to do that, but it's a key conceptual design question. How do you intend to employ this, and with regard to supporting software? It's not the thing, it's a part of a solution. That's likely the best way to think about it as a leader. How big does the LLM need to be? We'll explain what we mean there, but going to the super large ones is not necessarily the right answer for all tasks. And as a leader, it's a key design question for you to key in on. And then the last is there are COTS and open source options here. You need to understand them and then make the best decision for your organization. So inside versus outside. Just to make this really simple, most of us, the vast majority of us, are going to live and conduct our work, whether commercial work or government work, on a proprietary network. And what shields us from the outside and malicious actors, hackers, etc., is a firewall and other parts of security apparatus for penetration detection and things of this nature. Many organizations pretty careful and deliberate about what information is going to be sent outside the firewall and what you have coming back in. And so one of your questions and an alternative for you is using an LLM that is outside the firewall, like ChatGPT is today. Some organizations prohibit it today as we're recording this. Some allow it, but it's a critical conceptual design question. What do you want for your organization? What is appropriate for your organization? And build around that. Now, a second issue associated with this, whether you bring it inside the firewall or outside, is training. How is it trained? And to be clear, we could bifurcate this and say there are two domains. There's the public internet and publicly available information domain on the right-hand side, and then there are manifold proprietary networks that are represented on the left, and each one of them has a firewall, right? Your organization is one of those. And the big publicly available, the very large LLMs like GPT, BERT, ERNIE, general language model, etc., they're trained on publicly available data. They don't have access to your private data. And so depending on your use cases, it may be crucial for you to bring your LLM inside the firewall and exist on the left-hand side of this graphic. So you benefit from what has been done on the left, but you're then training specifically with your organization's proprietary or sensitive data. And that's a critical decision. It's going to affect compute infrastructure and a number of other activities. Now, the second conceptual design factor, B, in the framework, is thinking about wrapping the LLM in software or integrating it. And this is just a simple conceptual depiction of what we typically do with machine learning and AI models in many environments, commercial and government. There is a workflow represented at the top in this long horizontal bar that sits in some application. It may be a sales-oriented application, enterprise resource planning, maintenance-oriented, human capital, etc. But I've got a big application. And models are presented to that application to hit certain decision points or to guide certain processing activities. And when that happens, normally, the software is calling the model, and that model has been set up such that it has certain data sources, there's a data pipeline, the model processes those inputs, and it sends an output back to the larger application in the context of the workflow. What's interesting, and I think it's important, is the LLM as the model here, it's not the solution. The LLM is a part of a larger solution. And a challenge, I think, for leaders in our interactions is We all can experience ChatGPT. We can be at the keyboard and we can type in prompts ourselves and get answers. That's consumer-like use of ChatGPT. That may not be the most powerful use. When we begin to develop enterprise applications that lean on these models in the way that we lean on other machine learning and AI models in the context of bigger software, now we start to unlock some big potential. So think about how you're going to wrap the LLM or integrate it into software in your organization. That's a big design question. Now, very large LLMs are simply one way to attack this problem. Generative pre-trained transformer has gotten super large, as we explained, up to potentially 20 trillion parameters in the instance of GPT-5. Now, what drives that in this very simple graphic is on the left-hand side, you're adding topicality. So you're training more and more different topics covered over bigger expanses of time and depth. And then you're also doing things with the model to allow it to handle different kinds of tasks, translate varying languages, get better in software related activities, as an example. That's one way to approach this. What we should take away, we would argue, from this whole revolution in the transformer architectures is that LLMs are available, and they are available in varying sizes. So if you have, in the highlighted text here, some narrower tasks that cover narrower topic ranges, so maybe it's something supply chain related, but we're pretty bounded in the kind of content we really want this thing to address accurately with complete contextualization and in a logical way that's readable. Well, maybe we don't need a super large LLM. Maybe you don't, right? That's the question. And in a design context, when you interact with your IT team, your data science team, the mission partners that you're bringing together to rally around this, don't assume that the super large LLMs are the way to go. They may not. They may not be the best way for your organization. Now, the last conceptual design factor we talked about is simply COTS and proprietary solutions versus open source. And we'll give you just a thumbnail here of what that looks like. So we obviously have, and we talked plenty about them, the big proprietary solutions that are on the left-hand side here. What's useful for leaders to be tuned to is, and your data science teams are almost certainly already working with them, right? There is an API, an application programming interface, referred to as Hugging Face, and it is a portal to a wide range of open source solutions. And it's not the only one. There are GitHub presences that have open source models for certain kinds of tasks. The point here is there's quite a large body of open source alternatives, and they can hit at the different functions we talked about: natural language, software generation, image generation, and ultimately multimodal, although multimodal tends to be with the big proprietary vendors right now. Then the last category is on the right. These are commercial off-the-shelf analytics or data integration environments, which are integrating LLMs into the product line. We should expect to see more growth here. We should expect to see the list of software vendors, COTS vendors, that have an LLM integrated into their suite to grow. And that may impact pricing and other things. We'll see how that evolves over time. But you're deciding which one of these paths makes sense for your organization. You may find, for example, that you can start to research and push fast in the center with open source. What looks promising in our organization with proprietary data? Then you maybe make a decision to move to the right or the left, as it were. But think about your options there. Now, we can take all of those factors and we can synthesize that effectively into 5 big options for organizations and that leaders ought to be conscious of. The first two at the top here will leverage the publicly available large language models. And here it's kind of commonsensical. Though if you're going to go public, why not go to the big ones that have really expansive topicality and have been trained on a wide variety of tasks? And there are two different ways that you could implement that. One, the simplest one at the top, is effectively authorizing the use of these. So via the browser, all of your staff can use capabilities like Bard over the internet. Now, the key thing to be aware of here is your transacting activity, your transacting business over the internet. You're going outside your security firewall. What data are you going to allow to go out? What tasks are you going to allow to be addressed? What do you need to be sensitive about as you do that? You can imagine, I'm going outside my firewall. What do I need to take care of? The second implementation method here would be leverage the public LLM, but this concept, wrap it in certain software, and we'll illustrate that in the implementation section, or integrate it into some of your existing applications. That's work that has to be done, but it's a viable potential path. The other three options are all inside the firewall. That's what you see enumerated here in 3, 4, and 5, inside the green box. So using our proprietary network, our intranet, if you will, we instance one of the very large LLMs. So let's say that we partner with Microsoft as an example, and in our private cloud, we're going to create an instance of GPT-4. That is a very consequential decision. That is not a low-cost decision, but that type of play is a path, and it would give you one of these high topicality, wide task range kinds of LLMs that you can potentially use. Now, two other options here, just to stitch together the factors that we identified and try to simplify them into 5 categories. Do app integration, but using an open source LLM. So that could be in a wide variety of functional areas. It could be customer service oriented, contact center oriented activities, help desk, internal to your company, human capital, etc. But you're taking an open source LLM, you're instancing it inside the firewall, training it on your data, and then you're integrating it to your applications, whatever the target function is. Then the last option there, do that same thing, but you're leveraging an analytics or a data integration platform like a Databricks, like a Scale AI, and their proprietary LLMs or their integrated LLMs. And again, we expect a lot more movement in this space. It's kind of logical to anticipate that that is coming with Salesforce, Oracle, etc. The big vendors are likely to go this path. So that captures some of your big design factors for inside or outside the firewall, how you wrap it or integrate it in software, how big a model do you really need to make this work, and then what do you choose as far as COTS versus open source? We synthesize that here into effectively 5 options for the organization. And we think that as a leader can orient you to have some good discussions, again, with these multi-headed teams, IT, data science, and mission partners. What's the option that works for us around particular business problems?